There were 3 wine glasses in the sink. Only 2 of us lived in the house. And I don't drink white wine. That was the first moment I knew something was off, not suspected, not imagined, knew. It was a Saturday morning, overcast, humid, with the kind of thick air that makes you feel like the walls are pressing in. I was heading to the kitchen to feed the cat when I saw them. 3 glasses. 1 lipstick stained, 1 still half full, and 1 with a tiny crack at the rim that Cassidy always claimed she'd toss but never did. The cracked one was mine. The lipstick wasn't hers. Cassidy's favorite gloss is a subtle rose shade. This one? Bold crimson, the kind you wear when you want to be noticed. I didn't touch them. Just stood there, staring. A strange silence filled the kitchen, the kind that makes your skin itch. I opened the dishwasher. Empty. So why weren't these used? Why not hidden? Then I heard her upstairs, humming. Something soft and upbeat. She only hummed like that when she was in a good mood or guilty. Cassidy appeared in the doorway in her silk robe, the one she said was too pretty to waste on sleep. She didn't notice my stare. Or maybe she pretended not to. She kissed my cheek absent-mindedly, reached past me for coffee, and said, "Raymond loved the duck last night." I think I finally impressed him. I didn't ask who Raymond was. I already knew. I also knew we didn't have duck. She spun the story casually, like she'd practiced it in the mirror. Her boss, a long week, an overdue campaign pitch, a glass of wine to wind down. He stayed for an hour, tops, she said, swiping through her phone, not looking up. Just talk strategy. I nodded, because that's what I do. I nod and tell myself I'm overthinking. Later, while she was showering, I took the trash out. Not because it was full, it wasn't, but because I needed air. Needed movement. Control. That's when I saw it. Near the bottom of the bin, beneath crumpled napkins and the takeout menu we never used, was the box. You know the kind. Small, rectangular, quietly life-altering. A pregnancy test wrapper. I didn't even have to dig. It was sitting there like it wanted to be found. My hands were cold. I reached for it anyway. The test was gone, but the box remained, instructions folded, receipt tucked inside. Purchased 2 days ago from the pharmacy near her office. We hadn't been close. Not in weeks. Not since she started working late. Not since Raymond. I didn't say anything that night. Or the next. I watched her. I listened. She joked more. Touched me less. She wore makeup to Zoom calls. She started using perfume before bed. It's funny how fast you become a stranger in your own life. I kept asking myself one question over and over. Why leave the wine glasses out? It wasn't carelessness. It wasn't forgetfulness. It felt like a message. The next Thursday night, Cassidy said she was heading to an off-site team planning session. Those were her exact words. Not a dinner. Not drinks. A session. Like it was some kind of strategic summit held in secret. She packed her laptop, wore her most tailored blazer, the one I'd bought her for a promotion that never came, and dabbed a drop of perfume behind each ear like she was going to be on camera. For a brainstorming session. At 8:15 p.m. She kissed me goodbye with the same rhythmless peck as always. No warmth, no meaning. Then she grabbed her keys and walked out the door. I counted slowly in my head. 60, 120, 300. At the 7-minute mark, I grabbed my jacket, my keys, and slipped out the side door. Her car was already gone, but I knew where she liked to stop, the little gas station 2 blocks away with the overpriced energy drinks and security cameras that never worked. She always filled up there before long drives. I coasted behind her down the hill in my old Honda, headlights off, windows cracked just enough to let in the crisp October air. I told myself I was being stupid, that I was just paranoid. But when she turned right toward the city instead of left toward her office, that pit in my stomach twisted into something uglier. She didn't signal. She didn't even glance in the mirror. I followed from 2 cars back. Stayed in the lane over. I was calm on the outside, but my hands wouldn't stop clenching the wheel. 23 minutes later, she pulled into a boutique hotel. One of those places that tries to look historic but charges triple the rate for character. The kind with dim lobby lights and bellhops who never ask questions. She parked, got out, fixed her hair in the mirror. And then he stepped out of the passenger side. Raymond. I'd never seen him outside a suit before. Tonight, it was a navy sweater and perfectly ironed jeans. He looked like he belonged in a catalog for things I couldn't afford. He touched her back lightly as they walked inside, like he'd done it 1,000 times. She didn't flinch. She leaned in. I didn't move for 10 minutes. When I finally drove away, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even curse. I just sat in the silence of my car and tried to make sense of the lie I was living inside. I got home and stared at the ceiling until morning. She came back around 2 a.m., hair up, makeup gone, clutching her laptop like a prop in a bad play. She whispered, "You're asleep, right?" Like it was a wish, then slid into bed beside me and turned away. And I just laid there, pretending, listening to her breath even out, wondering if the child she might be carrying was his. It would be another week before I'd see something even worse, something I couldn't unsee once it happened. But even then, I didn't leave. I didn't scream. I just kept absorbing every truth like a sponge that never wrings itself out. It was a quiet Sunday, the kind where the world felt still enough to pretend everything was fine. Cassidy was out again, brunch with the girls, though I noticed she dressed more like she was auditioning for something. That tiny leather clutch she only uses on nights she wants to look expensive, and heels I haven't seen in months. She left in a hurry, but not before reminding me to maybe clean the garage, if you're up for it. As if I wasn't already drowning in my own head. I didn't clean the garage. I sat on the edge of the bed for almost 30 minutes, scrolling through nothing on my phone. My eyes didn't register the screen. My thoughts weren't really thoughts, just flashes. Raymond's hand on her back. The lipstick on the glass. That damn pregnancy test. Then my phone buzzed, a message from someone I hadn't spoken to in almost a year. Delaney, one of Cassidy's closest friends. Used to come by all the time. Always laughed at my jokes, always left half her wine glass behind. She and Cassidy had drifted apart recently. Or maybe Cassidy had pushed her away. I didn't think much of it, until I opened the message. "Hey Emery, I know this is random. Are you free to talk? In person?" There was no emoji, no LOL at the end, no soft landing. Just a timestamp and silence. We met an hour later at a small park across town. I sat on a bench near the playground, watching leaves scatter across the concrete like they were trying to run away from something. Delaney arrived bundled in a beige coat, sunglasses on despite the cloudy sky. She didn't even say hello at first. Just stood in front of me, arms folded tight, like she was holding in 1,000 words. "You okay?" I asked, my voice cracking around the edges. She didn't answer that either. Instead, she handed me a manila envelope, slightly wrinkled, sealed with a shaky line of Scotch tape. My name was written on the front in delicate handwriting I didn't recognize. "What's this?" Delaney sat beside me, finally pulling off her sunglasses. Her eyes were tired, regretful. I wasn't going to get involved. I tried to stay out of it. But Cassidy crossed a line I can't unsee. And I can't stay quiet knowing you're in the dark like this. I wanted to speak, but my throat locked. My hands gripped the envelope like it might vanish. "She told Raymond you were clueless. That you were safe. That you'd never suspect anything. I was at her apartment 2 weeks ago." "Yes, apartment. The one you don't know about. She's been meeting him there for months. She said it's where she goes to breathe." I stared down at the envelope. My vision blurred. I didn't ask what was inside. Some part of me already knew. "She's pregnant, Emery. And it's not yours. I know that's brutal, but you deserve to stop living in the illusion she built for you." Delaney placed a hand gently on my shoulder, and for a moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, someone actually seeing me. "Open it when you're ready. Just don't ignore it. Please." Then she walked away. Quiet. Heavy. I sat on that bench for another 30 minutes. The envelope burned in my lap like it carried something radioactive. When I finally peeled it open, I found printed screenshots. Messages. Photos. Timestamped calendar invites. One note from Cassidy to Raymond that read, "He's boring, but harmless. I'll leave him once we're set." Once we're set. There was a second pregnancy test inside. This time, untouched. Still in the wrapper. Still sealed. Positive label circled in red. I didn't go home. Not right away. I drove for 3 hours with no destination, just miles of silence and 2 questions hammering into me on repeat. How long has she been preparing for my replacement? And why was I the only one who didn't see it coming? I didn't plan to take her phone. I didn't even mean to be near it. But fate, or maybe karma, doesn't really ask for permission. It just sets the trap and waits for the moment you're too numb to notice the floor cracking under your feet. It was the following Monday, mid-morning. Cassidy was running late for work, flustered, brushing her hair in the hallway while jamming her tablet into her tote. She'd spilled coffee on her blouse and was ranting about traffic before she even got her shoes on. I watched her pace from the kitchen, saying nothing. She didn't even glance in my direction, like I was just part of the furniture. Then she grabbed her phone off the counter, or so she thought. It wasn't hers. It was mine. We both had the same model, identical cases, both black with a matte finish. The only difference was a faint scratch on mine across the back near the charging port. I noticed instantly. She didn't. And in her rush, she stuffed it into her bag without even looking. A full 2 hours later, she called me from her work line. Hey, you picked up my phone by mistake this morning, right? I blinked, genuinely confused for a moment. I hadn't left the house. I hadn't even put on socks. Then I looked down at the phone charging on the desk. The wallpaper was her and Raymond. Not a romantic one, not kissing or touching, just a filtered shot of them at a bar with a bottle of wine between them. Casual. Innocent, if you didn't already know. But I did know. I said nothing on the call. Just mumbled something about, oh, yeah, weird mix-up, and promised I'd bring it to her office. She thanked me, sounding relieved. Just don't open it, she laughed. You'll get spammed with boring team chats all day. She hung up. I stared at the screen, still locked, heart hammering. My thumb hovered over the power button. She didn't use facial recognition. She used a PIN. I tried the first one that came to mind, our anniversary. Denied. Then her birthday. Denied. Then Raymond's birthday. She'd mentioned it once, casually, when he got her some limited edition perfume as a minter gift. It opened. I swear I felt my entire chest tighten. The first thing I saw was a thread marked with a heart. His contact name wasn't Raymond or Boss. It was R followed by a blue butterfly emoji. She hated emojis. She once told me they were childish. I tapped the thread. It was like someone pulled a curtain back on a version of my wife I never knew existed. He's still asleep. I told him I had cramps again. He doesn't question it anymore. Let's use the apartment Thursday. I'll pretend there's a webinar at work. He's so passive. Honestly, he's part of why I crave you. The test's positive. I didn't plan for this, but part of me hopes it is yours. I stopped breathing. I read that one 3 times, trying to find a version where it didn't mean what it obviously meant. But the rest of the messages only drove it deeper. I could never raise a child with Emery. He's too soft. I need someone real. That line gutted me more than anything else. Too soft. All these years, I thought being gentle, supportive, patient, I thought those were virtues. Turns out they made me disposable. I opened the photos. There weren't many, but enough. A few selfies of them at restaurants. One of them holding her from behind in the mirror of a hotel bathroom. Another where her head was resting on his chest, eyes closed like she had nothing in the world to worry about. The timestamps didn't lie. Some were from days she told me she was working late. Others from nights she came home complaining about back-to-back meetings and toxic management. And in one video, just a few seconds long, she whispered to him while lying in bed, once he figures it out, I'll say it just happened, that I was confused. He won't yell. He'll cry. He always cries. She knew. She counted on me being too weak to walk away. I sat on the edge of the bed for over an hour, the phone in my hand, screen gone dark. I didn't cry. Not right then. I didn't feel anything at all. Just hollow. When I finally stood up, I didn't take the phone to her office. I drove somewhere else. Someplace I hadn't been in 10 years. Because if I was going to survive what came next, I needed someone who used to know who I was before I became this version of myself, this ghost in his own house. I didn't go to her office that day. I didn't drop off the phone. I didn't call, text, or send one of those accidentally found everything you've been hiding kind of messages. I couldn't even bring myself to look at her name on the screen. It sat there like it was daring me to reply. 3 missed calls. 4. Then 6. And still, I didn't move. Instead, I drove across town to a neighborhood I hadn't seen since I was 27. Back before marriage, before mortgages, before Cassidy. Before I let myself get reshaped into someone who says it's okay, even when it's not. The houses here were older, weathered by time and salt air, with cracked sidewalks and overgrown vines that curled around the fences like they were too stubborn to die. I pulled up to a blue duplex near the end of a cul-de-sac. The curtains were open. I could see a woman inside sweeping the floor while talking to a cat like it was her roommate. That was her Jules. Julianne Mason. We dated for 3 years in our 20s. We didn't break up because of a fight. There was no drama. We just drifted. I moved for a job, and she stayed to care for her mother. We called it a pause at first, but neither of us ever pressed play again. I didn't know why I drove there. I just knew she was the last person who ever made me feel like I was enough. When she opened the door, she stared at me for a long moment like she wasn't sure if she was dreaming. Emery, she asked, her voice tilted sideways with confusion. What in the world are you? Are you okay? I must have looked awful. Pale, stiff, exhausted. I hadn't really slept in days. I didn't know where else to go, I said, barely above a whisper. She didn't ask anything else. She just stepped aside and let me in. Jules made tea, the same cinnamon vanilla kind she used to brew when we were broke and pretending the scent made our one-bedroom apartment smell expensive. She sat across from me at her dining table, hands folded, eyes waiting. I think she's been planning to leave me, I said finally. Jules's expression didn't flinch. She didn't gasp or lean in dramatically. She just nodded slowly, like she was giving me space to be as pathetic as I needed to be. I found messages. Photos. She's been seeing her boss. He knows about me. They joke about how I'd never figure it out. She's pregnant, and I'm pretty sure it's his. Silence. I expected her to say something comforting. But instead, she asked the one question no one else had. When did she stop respecting you? That hit me like a brick. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. Because I didn't know. Maybe it wasn't one moment. Maybe it was a slow erosion, like the way waves eat cliffs. Barely noticeable until half the coastline is gone. She used to call me steady, I said after a while. Said I kept her grounded. Then one day that became boring. Like I was a security blanket she outgrew. Jules leaned forward. You've always been kind. Thoughtful. That's not weakness. But the wrong person will twist those things to make you feel like a placeholder. I didn't realize I was crying until I tasted salt on my lip. And then I just let go. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't pretending to be fine. I wasn't pretending to believe her lies. I wasn't scrolling through old texts looking for proof I mattered. I was just broken. I gave her everything, I muttered. Every part of me. And now she's treating me like a footnote in her story. Jules didn't say, "You'll be okay," or "Time heals." She reached into a drawer and pulled out an old photo of me from years ago, younger, unshaven, holding a bag of chips in one hand and a video game controller in the other, grinning like an idiot. "You were happy then," she said. "You were you. Whoever she turned you into isn't the man I remember." I didn't sleep at her place. I couldn't. That chapter of our lives was long closed. But she gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time: clarity. On the way out, she stopped me with a hand on my arm. "If she's lying about this," she said, "she's probably lying about more. A lot more." I knew she was right. I just didn't know how right until the next day, when I finally got a call from an unknown number. A woman's voice. Shaky. Quiet. "I don't know you," she said, "but I thought you should know. Your wife offered me money to lie about the baby." The call came in just after noon. I was in my car, parked in front of a diner I used to love but couldn't bring myself to enter anymore. I hadn't eaten a real meal in 3 days, just pretended to eat toast, picked at cold pasta, and poured coffee I never finished. Everything tasted like dust. The screen lit up with a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail. Something told me not to. "Hello." There was a pause. Then a voice, female, soft, cautious, like she was about to reveal a secret she wasn't sure she had the right to share. "Hi, is this Emery?" "Emery Reeves." "Yes," I said slowly. "Who is this?" Another pause. A breath. Then the bomb. "My name is Adrian. I work with your wife." "Kind of. I'm in her department, but not directly under her." I wasn't going to say anything, but after yesterday, I can't keep this to myself anymore. I sat upright. Every muscle in my body tightened. "What happened yesterday?" "She offered me money," Adrian said, her voice cracking like she was ashamed just saying the words. "To lie. About the baby." "What do you mean lie?" "She asked me to pretend I took the pregnancy test. That it was mine. She said it would explain the one you found. She even told me how to act surprised if you ever brought it up. She said you were gullible but decent, and that you'd believe it if it came from a third party." I couldn't speak. I felt like the air had turned to cement in my lungs. "I didn't take it, obviously," Adrian continued. "But I know she's been seeing that guy at Raymond. Everyone knows. It's not even subtle anymore. I don't know if you two are still together or what, but I thought you should know what she's trying to do." "Why are you telling me this?" I finally whispered. "Because I used to be someone's fool too," she said simply. "And no one told me. No one warned me until it was too late." I thanked her. I don't remember what I said. I think I cried after I hung up, but I can't even recall the moment. I just remember staring out the windshield as people walked past my car, laughing, carrying takeout bags, living lives untouched by betrayal. Then it hit me like a cold wave. Cassidy wasn't just cheating. She wasn't just lying. She was constructing an escape plan. An entire story, one where I was either irrelevant or disposable. And now she was bribing people to cover her tracks, just to stretch the illusion long enough for her to land on her feet. What was her endgame? Fake a miscarriage and leave before I asked questions? Pretend she was devastated, then find comfort in Raymond's arms once enough time passed? Was she planning to make me take the blame for a child that wasn't mine? It felt like a movie plot, the kind that makes you shout at the screen because no one can possibly be that naive. Except I had been. And I still hadn't confronted her. Not once. It wasn't fear exactly. It was paralysis. This slow, humiliating realization that I was still hoping, in some ruined part of my heart, that it wasn't all true. That maybe I had misunderstood something. That maybe she'd look me in the eye and finally tell the truth. But I knew better now. So I did something I hadn't done in months. I went home early. Before she could. I parked 2 blocks away and walked, careful, quiet. I let myself in and stood in the living room. Just stood there, staring at the place we built together. The framed photos on the walls. The vase she insisted on keeping even after I broke the matching one. The blanket folded neatly on the couch, the one we used to fight over when movies ran long and nights got cold. And then I opened her desk drawer. I wasn't snooping. Not anymore. I was looking for the blueprint of my own undoing. Inside, I found a folder labeled Personal Transition Plan. The moment I opened it, I felt sick. There were notes. Bullet points. Action items. Separate finances gradually, he won't notice. Remove name from gym account. Make it look like a system error. Ask Raymond about condo timeline. We'll need move out by end of December. Tell Emery it's about space, not someone else. Emphasize burnout. Do not admit affair unless backed into corner. Use therapy angle if needed. She was planning it like a corporate reorg. A calculated shift where I got phased out like outdated software. I sat there for what felt like hours, gripping the edge of the desk, heart beating like it wanted to burst out of my chest. Every word felt like a knife sharpened just for me. And I realized then that Cassidy wasn't just lying to protect something fragile, she was orchestrating a total replacement of her life. Including me. I left the folder exactly where I found it. Not because I was afraid of her knowing I saw it, but because I needed her to believe I was still clueless, at least for now. She came home that night like nothing had changed, breezing through the door with a fake yawn and a paper bag of organic salad kits, like we were still a married couple planning a casual Tuesday evening. She looked surprised to see me in the kitchen. I hadn't cooked in over a month. That had been her domain ever since she got serious about clean eating. But there I was, standing over the stove, flipping garlic butter shrimp like I had something to celebrate. Cassidy raised an eyebrow. You cooked. Her tone was playful, slightly mocking. What's the occasion? No occasion, I said, calm, too calm. I figured we haven't had a proper dinner together in a while. She smiled, that practiced little tilt of her lips she used when trying to steer a conversation away from suspicion. Well, look at you. Domestic king. You didn't poison anything, right? I smiled back. Guess you'll find out. We sat at the table like strangers in a model home, wine glasses perfectly filled, silverware aligned, candle flickering between us like it believed in romance more than we did. She started talking about her day, the usual word salad of brand strategy and quarterly metrics. I nodded in the right places, but my mind was somewhere else. Her phone, the one I had returned to her earlier that morning without a word, sat on the counter behind her. Face down. Muted. Trusting. I watched her eat. The way she avoided eye contact when she talked. The way her thumb grazed the side of her wine glass like she was stalling, stretching time. She didn't know I'd already seen her transition plan. Or the texts. Or the photo of the pregnancy test sitting in a file labeled Timeline. Exit strategy. She still thought I was in the dark. That I was folding quietly, like always. So I let her finish her plate. I let her sip the rest of her wine. I even cleared the dishes like the good, harmless husband she'd written me to be. And when I returned to the table with 2 cups of tea, hers with honey, mine plain, I set something down between us. A small white envelope. Her name written on the front. Cassidy blinked. What's this? I didn't answer. I just watched. She picked it up with cautious fingers, slowly peeled it open, and pulled out the contents, a single printed photo of the note she'd written to Raymond, the one from the folder. The one that said, once he figures it out, I'll say I was overwhelmed. He'll fold. He always folds. Cassidy's face drained of color. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I placed my tea down gently. You forgot to shred your notes. Her lips finally moved. Emery, I can explain. I bet you can, I said. And I bet if I give you 5 minutes, you'll cry. 10, and you'll bring up therapy. 15, and I'll start thinking maybe it's my fault. She blinked hard. Her jaw tensed. But here's the thing, I said, leaning forward. I'm done folding. Silence. Then she tried again, slower this time. This wasn't how I wanted it to happen. You offered someone money to lie for you, I replied. You spent months building an off-ramp out of our life. You manipulated me, belittled me, erased me from your future one bullet point at a time. So no, Cassidy, this didn't just happen. You designed it. She looked away, jaw trembling. I know about the baby, I added. That broke her. She turned back, panic flickering in her eyes. It's not what you think. I laughed, an ugly, tired sound I didn't recognize as my own. Is it not? Because I think you're pregnant with Raymond's child. And I think you were planning to fake a miscarriage after the transition was clean and convenient. She didn't deny it. That was the moment it all died. Whatever thread we'd been pretending still connected us, it snapped. She tried shifting the conversation, like always. I didn't mean to hurt you, Em. I was scared. I felt stuck. You weren't stuck. You were bored. And instead of telling me, you turned me into a storyline you could erase. I stood, pushing my chair back carefully. I won't yell. I won't fight you. But you'll be hearing from my lawyer. And for what it's worth, the house? It's in my name. So you'll want to start looking at Raymond's condo timeline a little closer. Cassidy stared at me, stunned. She didn't even ask how I knew. I left her there at the table. The candle still burning. The envelope still open. Her tea going cold. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't look back. I didn't move back in with my parents. I didn't crash on anyone's couch. I didn't wander the city lost in some fog of heartbreak. I did what I hadn't done in years. I chose myself. 3 weeks after that night, the house was mine again. The silence, too. But this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Like walking out of a storm and realizing you're still standing, even if you're soaked and shaking. Cassidy didn't fight the divorce. She didn't have the ground to stand on. Once my attorney laid out the evidence, the texts, the notes, the voicemail from Adrian, her side folded faster than I ever did. She moved in with Raymond. I heard through Delaney that they lasted all of 11 days before he started fading on her. I guess betrayal doesn't taste as sweet when you're on the receiving end. But the part one never expected? The twist that somehow turned all of this from a tragedy into something else? It started with a safe deposit box. I found the key in one of Cassidy's old coats while I was boxing up her things. Tucked in a zipped pocket, almost like it was meant to stay hidden. I knew which bank it belonged to. We'd opened a joint box years ago when we first got married. Birth certificates, a backup USB of our wedding photos, a few old mementos from our honeymoon. Or so I thought. When I opened the box, I found everything I remembered and something I didn't. A sealed envelope with my name on it. The handwriting wasn't Cassidy's. Inside was a letter from her father, one I'd never met. He'd passed a year before we married, long before I knew Cassidy well. The letter was dated 4 days before his death. Emery, if you're reading this, then either my daughter gave you this too late or you found it on your own, both of which say a lot about her. I saw something in you she never appreciated. You were kind. You were real. You treated her better than she ever understood. I don't say this to shame her. I say it because I want you to know your worth isn't defined by how someone else fails to love you. I set something aside for you. Not much, but enough. My old brokerage account is in your name now. Cassidy doesn't know. She wouldn't have cared. If she lets you go, good. Don't look back. You were never meant to live in her shadow. I stared at the paper for a long time. At his name. His signature. He'd seen me. A man I never met had seen me clearer than the woman I shared a life with. The brokerage account wasn't massive, but it was enough. Enough to help me move out of the house. Enough to start again without scraping every last cent, enough to finally build something of mine. And I did. I moved to a coastal town 2 states away, somewhere slower, warmer. I started freelancing again, but this time on my terms. I bought a small fixer-upper with a creaky porch and overgrown roses and painted the walls whatever color I wanted without having to explain it. I adopted another cat, a tiny orange terror named Harold who torments Merle daily and somehow healed a part of me I didn't know was broken. And one day, sitting in a coffee shop with a half-finished book in my hands, I looked up and met someone's eyes across the room. She smiled at me. A real smile. No secrets. I don't know where that story will go yet. And I'm okay with that. Because for once, I'm not playing a part someone else wrote. I'm not folding. I'm not doubting myself. I'm just living. And if you're reading this, if you're in the middle of your own storm, thinking you're too soft or too slow or too late. Hear me. Kindness isn't weakness. It just takes the right person to see it for what it is: strength. I finally did.